¿Qué es tu nombre?
Milady.
Milady. ¿Qué es tu niña?
Isabela.
Isabela.
Y Michelle.
Ah, encantado de conocerte.
Igual. ¿Tu nombre es?
Oh, mi nombre es Frank.
Frank. Hola Frank.
Hola.
Saludos.
Hola.
Dile Venezuela. ¿Cómo se
Mi
llama?
pequeña hermana. La niña.
Mira. Dile a la cámara. ¿Cómo se llama?
Sí.
The World Travel Sage, and you may ask the question, why is a guy with a travel channel talking about politics, economics, and history? And what does that have to do with world travel? Well, in my view, it has everything to do with world travel. Now, I know a lot of people just want to know where's the best beach, where's the best places to go, and just want to have a good time. But I'm a guy who's interested in the real life of real people. And I go, and that's the experience that I want. I'm not really a sit on a resort kind of guy. So I want to spend time with real people, and I want to know about their real lives. And so politics, history, economics, all plays a role in the lives of real people in the real world around us. And that's what I hope to better inform you about. So, politics, history, economics have everything to do with world travel, in my view. Capitalism is a system that's not really explained to us very well. And capitalism is essentially a system that is designed to help generate profits. And capitalism is kind of like a sharp tool. And its main strength, just like any tool, is to generate profits. So, an unfettered capitalist system is like a locomotive train that is just running out of control as fast as possible, generating profits as quickly and as much as possible without anything hindering its moving forward, anything hindering its speed. And what kind of things have come out of a system of unfettered capitalism? We have had things like 300 years of slavery. We have had child labor. We have had years of no labor protections where workers just were forced to work as much as possible. No limits, no minimum wages. Unfettered capitalism has brought us things like Chernobyl, has brought us things like cutting down rainforests, and have brought us oceans full of plastic and pollution. That is all unfettered capitalism. And so you see, the thing that slows down capitalism are safeguards to protect the public interest. So on the one hand, while we want a system that is going to generate profits as quickly and as fast as possible, do we want there to be, what is the damage that that system is going to create by generating profits as quickly as possible? And how much will fixing the damage that capitalism does, cost? For instance, here in New York, companies dumped pollution into the Hudson River for many years. And you know why? Because they had factories on the Hudson River and they just wanted to get rid of their pollution as easily as possible. Just dump it right in the river. It's right next door. And you know what? That is the cheapest way for us to just move forward and, continue our business. So that is all unfettered capitalism. And now we're spending millions of dollars to clean up that pollution. That is unfettered capitalism. Okay? And we still, in many ways, have unfettered capitalism because we allow giant corporations to pay people $1.50 an hour around the world. Apple products in Chinese factories, while Apple parks $300 billion in an offshore bank account. So it pays people $1.50 an hour to assemble phones and parks hundreds of billions of dollars in profits in an offshore bank account to avoid paying taxes. Now just imagine company after company parking hundreds of billions of dollars in offshore bank accounts to avoid paying taxes. And taxes for giant corporations are essentially a way to fix the damage that unfettered capitalism creates. And so that is the world that we live in today. And while yes, there are more safeguards on capitalism than there were during the 300 years of slavery, there are still not enough. Now, European economies are largely capitalistic, but they are tempered by socialism. They are tempered by safeguards that slow down capitalism from generating profit, but they are designed to protect the public interest, to protect the public interest of the public and to give them a high standard of living. For instance, things like 6 weeks paid vacation is a safeguard for the public interest. You want to make sure that workers also have time to take off and enjoy their lives. Here in the United States, we are one of the only industrialized nations that give no legally mandated paid vacation. While the United States is lauded as a democracy, we have some of the weakest worker protections in the world. And you know, those countries in Europe did not get stronger worker protections just by some magic. The fact is that they fought hard. Workers unionized and fought hard to get those protections. And in the United States, we have a long history of labor working hard to get protections also. And yet that history is one that is obscured. How many big buildings or stadiums or anything are named after labor leaders who fought hard for the benefit of the majority of the citizens? We have Rockefeller Center, we have Carnegie Hall, we have Astoria, which is named after the Astors. We have a world which, in the United States, that celebrates those winners of capitalism, the wealthy, while the loser's story is never told, even though the losers are by far the majority. And so, just like we had 300 years of slavery so people could just generate profits as much as possible, because that made my life better, my 100 slaves. Well, you know what? People working in factories in China for $1.50 an hour is making the shareholders of Apple very happy. But what is the damage that that does around the world? The immigration problem in the United States has been because the United States has done everything it can to keep Latin American countries from creating real democracies and creating systems that protect workers. And so now people in Central and South America still earn so little money that coming to the United States is their best option for improving their lives. we have assassinated and overthrown leader after leader in Central and South America who actually wanted to benefit their people's interests. And so the lives of people in Central and South America has largely been created by an unfettered capitalist system that the United States in many ways has been the leader of, at least in our own backyard. And so, why do people have to turn to things like prostitution or selling drugs or kidnapping tourists? It's because of unfettered capitalism. And with a minimum wage of $1 an hour in the Dominican Republic, a minimum wage of $1.50 an hour in Colombia, well, that's unfettered capitalism going strong around the world. It can be very hard to get a job in places like the Dominican Republic or Colombia. I spoke to one woman in the Dominican Republic. She told me that she got a job. And I said, well, it's great you got a job. You know, it can be really hard. And she said, well, it's not that great. She said, because I earn so little money. And I said, well, how much do you earn? And she said that she worked a 40-hour week in a shoe factory in the Dominican Republic, and she took home $38 a week. Now you have to understand that there are international treaties like NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which govern to a large degree wages around the world. So these are international treaties that create minimum wages of $1 and $1.50 an hour. And so in the Dominican Republic, people's choices are to work in a factory and take home $38 a week, or to possibly prostitute yourself and make $40 an hour. Now, if I just took that out of context and just said, well, you've got the option in the Dominican Republic of two jobs. One will pay you $40 an hour, and one will pay you $40 a week. Which job would you do? So that is the reality of life around the world. And you know, I hear men who talk about the women in the Dominican Republic who do sex work. And they hold them to a standard that seems to be like the same as in the United States. But you see, anybody who does sex work in the United States does so because they want to. They have options. No, maybe those options are not that great, but the simple fact is if you were a hard worker, you could eventually become a manager at a McDonald's or something like that and make $50,000, $60,000 a year. Even starting your own business of house cleaning or mowing lawns is a viable option here. People don't have that option in places like the Dominican Republic and Colombia. So I want you to understand that capitalism, while having its strengths, also has its weaknesses. And so for anybody who's trying to talk to you about the weaknesses of capitalism is like saying, you know, what the weaknesses of a backhoe is, or any kind of tool. All right? A tool is designed for a specific job. Capitalism does certain things very well. Other things it does not do so well. And so, how can we let the locomotive of capitalism just plunge forward as fast as possible and generate profits without doing that much damage that we have to pay to repair or fix? And look, a lot of that damage is a matter of ethical and moral standards. So, maybe we don't care about, 6-year-olds working in factories. Maybe we don't care about there's something wrong with owning human beings. Maybe we don't care about cutting down all the trees or dumping the oceans full of plastic. Maybe if we don't really care about those things, then just do them. that's the way we can generate the most profits, right? That's capitalism. So, we live in a world where we hear about the winners of capitalism, but we do not hear so much from the losers. It's kind of like the lottery. If we took the winners of the lottery and paraded them around and said, oh, yeah, the lottery is just so great. Look, I won $2 million. But there are millions of people who didn't win, and yet we're not parading them around. And so, the people in this world who have to do things like prostitute themselves and all the other kinds of things, poaching elephants and pirating boats off the coast of the Philippines, all kinds of activities, illegal and legal, are symptoms of an unfettered capitalist system that allows giant corporations to pay as little in taxes as possible while they pay people $1.50 an hour to make shoes in factories around the world. That is the system that we live in. That is a continuation of the unfettered capitalism that we had that brought us 300 years of things like slavery. So I just want you to better understand the capitalist system and to view it as a tool that has its strengths and its weaknesses in the world. And, well, we could have fair trade and fair wages for everything and everyone. Some of the things that we could do is support an international minimum wage and international human rights standards for how people are treated around the world. And we could take some of that $300 billion that Apple has parked in an offshore bank account, and we could take that out of bank accounts around the world of giant corporations who are parking profits in places so they can avoid paying taxes, and have that money pay for an international human wage, an international living wage, a wage that allows people around the world to live a halfway decent life, and to give people options other than prostituting themselves to survive. The world is getting smaller, and how you live your life affects the lives of people around the world. So, inform yourself and try to affect the lives of the people in this world in a healthy, positive way, so that we can actually say that we are contributing to a world that is getting better all the time. We need to care about how much people are paid in places like China and Indonesia for the products that we are buying. And yes, maybe we will have to pay more for those products, but the simple fact is most of us take so much for granted with what we have that we don't even realize the kind of things we take for granted. And that is one of the most incredible lessons of world travel, is to not take anything for granted and to have gratitude for the simple things in your life, because in many ways the simple things are the most important. European countries are much more democratic than the United States is, and that the proof of that democracy, the proof of that representation, the proof that average people are represented is in the form of national health care, paid sick leave, workers' benefits, making it difficult to fire people, all kinds of things across the board that European countries do to protect average people. And that is how you know that you are represented by your governmental system, that it actually creates safeguards to protect you. A system that only protects rich people, that constantly gives tax breaks to rich people, is a system that only benefits rich people. They have far better social benefits and social worker protections in Europe than they do in the United States. And that is because people in Europe are better represented by the democracies that they live in. Very simple. And because Europeans remember that they have to fight for their rights. They have to fight to be protected. Their interests are not going to be looked after by the wealthy class. That is something here in the United States we have forgotten. Labor Day around the world is a day when people remember the solidarity of workers, except here in the United States, where it represents the end of summer. We have forgotten the solidarity of workers and what it took for us to get a 40-hour work week, minimum wages, and the weak labor protections that we have here in the United States. We have forgotten the people who fought and died for those things. And we have to understand that capitalism is an economic tool. A tool, if properly regulated, can pretty much serve the public interest all the way from the poorest people to the richest people. But it requires regulation. It requires control. It cannot just be allowed to run amok and create damage around the world. But you see, we live in a system where rich people have lobbyists that they pay lots of money to lobby on their behalf. But who is lobbying on the behalf of the poor and middle class? Nobody. Congressmen, our representatives, are supposed to be the people fighting for our interests. But so many of them are so deep in the pockets of giant corporations, and Congress is such a corrupt institution that we cannot expect congressmen, even the best of them, to really be looking out for our interests. To get ahead in Congress, you need to have friends in high places. And friends in high places are friends who are looking out for the interests of the very rich and corporate power. And you see, corporations make money from exploiting average people around the world. Very simple. And if average people around the world expect to be protected, expect to have their rights looked after, we need to fight for them. We need to fight for our interests. And we need to know what's going on. So, capitalism is a tool that can serve everybody's interests if properly regulated and if we demand that our interests are protected.
¿Qué es tu nombre?
Lei,
¿Qué es tu niña?
Isabella,
Isabella.
e Michelle.
Ah.